Hello, welcome back to this edition of L's Joint. Today's topics, the tariff wars and our constitutional amendments 1 and 14. So let's take the gloves off and let's get at it. So folks, this administration is continuing to make a fool out of the United States with these tariff wars. They're going around telling you that 75 countries are begging us to come to the table. So I did a little investigating. You should do the same. Let me give you a list of some of the countries are listed, the ones that are contacting us. Lesotho, I believe that's a small country in Africa, 2 million people there. New Zealand with 5 million people. Australia with 26 million folks. Israel with 10 million people, which is about a fourth the size of California. Most people don't know that because of how much money we give to Israel. There's only 10 million people in that country. Cambodia, 17 million people. Anguilla, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. There's 14,500 people in that country. There's more people in my family than there are in that country that they claim that they're increasing the tariff percentage. And then there's Barbuda. There's 93,000 people, which is about a third of the size of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So those are the countries that are calling the United States asking to have their tariffs reduced. Like that's really going to affect the world's economy. I'm asking folks that instead of just listening to this administration, take it upon yourself to do some of your own research. China has made a fool of us. China hasn't blinked, and therefore Trump had to backpedal. He's now become a laughingstock of the world because all this bravado that he was portraying, he's had to walk it back. Now he's saying that, China, we're going to reduce the tariff percentage significantly. We're not going to go any higher. That's because China didn't blink. So now what do you have? Now you have the American economy over a cliff, and there's no end in sight, folks, because China has refused to cave in. And remember, China is a country that supplies us with stuff in which we, in turn, take and make other stuff and sell to the rest of the world. This administration never stopped to think that what happens if those items weren't being able to make it to the manufacturers here in the United States in order for them to finish the product and get it out to the rest of the world. The world's not blaming China and other countries. They understand that we did this to ourselves. We elected an idiot to the highest office in our country who doesn't know how to bargain. He knows how to rip off vendors by not paying them, by bullying them, but he doesn't know how to actually bargain. From an individual who's bargained hundreds of contracts, the one thing you know is that you don't put a proposal on the table unless you know what the outcome or how that outcome of that proposal is going to affect your constituents. And Trump failed to do that. He failed to realize what effect these tariffs will have on farmers, on small companies, on the middle class. There's also been, because of these tariffs, a direct drop in tourism dollars. Folks are not coming to the United States because of all the turmoil that Trump has caused. So we have to figure out exactly what the long-term effect this is going to have on our country. So despite Trump signing an executive order in his first few days in office supporting free speech, he pulled the hokey doke again. His administration immediately began trying to stifle free speech and attack the First Amendment. He's suing CBS for that 60-minute episode that aired that had the Kamala Harris interview. He sued the Des Moines Register for reporting poll numbers that he said was false and it cost him millions of dollars. How I have no clue what he's talking about. And I don't think he does either. I think he just wants to stifle your First Amendment rights. So he's throwing everything he can against the wall. He wants to see what sticks. Shout goes out to Harvard University for standing up against this administration and standing your ground as Trump threatened to withhold billions of dollars of funding because of the whole DEI issue, which, of course, their administration started their attack ads, of course, saying that they're bringing in radical students, and they're bringing in terrorists, the whole deal, right? It's all BS. We all know that, but it's not going to stop them because if they don't get their way, they think they can bully folks. Harvard hired an ex-Trump lawyer. Of course, Trump doesn't like that. He started attacking the lawyer. He reported that the lawyer was dumb and stupid. Well, if the lawyer is dumb and stupid, you shouldn't have no problem winning this case. But folks, we hear these things, and you hear folks refer to the Nazi Party and how they rose to power in the 1930s in Germany, and people right away want to dismiss that and say, "Oh, you lose credibility when you compare him to Hitler or to the Nazi Party." And I say that I think that's bullshit. I think that when you look at the trajectory, it's similar. They went after the press, and eventually they controlled the entire media in Germany. The only way you can get information out to German citizens if you drop leaflets in the neighborhood. That's all you had going for you. But this administration understands that if you can bully the media, that's half the fight. Once you control the media, when you start doing things, now it seems reasonable what you're doing. When Hitler started exterminating the Jews, there was nobody to report it. You couldn't get that information, didn't get out to the rest of the world because Germany controlled the media. There's a method to their madness, folks. This isn't Trump's idea. It's the folks who have him on a string. It's the folks who wrote Project 25. This isn't Donald Trump sitting down figuring out some mad scheme. He's not smart enough to do that. You elected an idiot, which is scarier because now folks are controlling. He doesn't even know he's being controlled. So, folks, the hypocrisy that centers around the 14th Amendment is overwhelming. For some reason, when anybody starts talking or attacking the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, the conservatives circle the wagons. They scream and holler from the mountaintops, protect our rights to bear arms. However, when it involves the 14th Amendment and you're deporting people of color, all of a sudden every loophole is okay. The end justifies the means. Is that because this particular case, the 14th Amendment that we're discussing, involved people of color? I just want folks to understand the hypocrisy that's there. The courts are ruling that, just like they did with the Second Amendment, that this administration has to follow the Constitution. But then they start attacking the judges. They start screaming that individual, that the end does justify the means. However, our Constitution is what makes this country great. It's not perfect, but it allows us to function in a democracy where everybody gets their due process and their day in court. So as folks mourn the passing of Pope Francis, who served for over a decade, I want to say that if there is a heaven, he's there. He's in a better place. Unlike us who's stuck in this living hell with the Elon Musk, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Donald Trumps, and a slew of other devils who are trying to take this country in a direction that would allow a person like Marjorie Taylor Greene to insinuate that the world's better without Pope Francis in it. Where the hell was she raised at? Who was her parents? Who would make a person think that it would be okay for them to say that this world's a better place without Pope Francis in it? For one, he's probably one of the most compassionate popes that we can remember. I guess that's what causes her concern. Maybe she never had compassion in her life. Maybe we should feel sorry for Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't understand how it makes sense for you to think that you know more than God. If this person served for over, I believe it's 12 years, for 12 years as a pope, that meant that he had the blessing of God, who at any time, if he wanted to call him home, could have called him home sooner. I believe that God knew that the work that Pope Francis was doing was benefiting the world. But of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene, in all her infinite wisdom, thinks that it's okay to cast doubt on what God decided was best. I don't understand, folks. You can't make this up. Where are all the conservatives now screaming and hollering, telling Marjorie Taylor Greene to back off? Where are all the Republicans now standing up, the Catholics who are Republicans? Where's the outcry? Can you imagine if a Democrat or an atheist had made those statements? Although I'm not Catholic, I do recognize decency, and I recognize that in Pope Francis. So why don't we take a moment to pause and appreciate what he brought to this earth. Well, thanks, folks, for joining me in this episode of Al's Joint. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and like and share by all means. I really appreciate it. So join me next Friday on the next episode.
This episode of Al's Joint is brought to you by Jackpack.